welcome to another episode of Meet the Zor. Today we talk with Pink Zebra Moving. Coming up next. All right, Ron, I know some of your story, but I have a feeling this is going to make it really good. What's your franchise story? How did you fall into franchising? Go back to the day before you were in franchising to that first day. How did you fall into this thing?
So I, like a lot of people in this industry, it sort of found me. I was in a different brand called Two Maids and a Mop. I'm the founder of that brand as well. I sold it a couple years ago. And for the first 10 or 11 years of the growth there, we built corporate stores. We had 12 corporate stores, primarily in the Southeast. And we were, running and gunning. All things were great. But we hit a little bit of a wall toward that 10th or 11th year. And we had to make a decision. Do we create a larger infrastructure within the home office to support all of this growth? We had several hundred employees across the country at that time. Or do we grow in a different way where we don't have to actually put so much effort and time and, honestly, money into a home office? I've always been a big fan of having your capital investments outside in the field for home services. And so I had been approached more than one time about franchising, but didn't know a whole lot about it. In fact, I heard some negative things about it, kind of spooked me. And so I decided to put on my thinking hat and visit Vegas for an IFA convention as a newbie. I was a complete rookie there, didn't know one person in the room, and was fortunate to meet some really good people, one of them being you, Nick, and fell in love with the idea of franchising shortly after that. And the rest of my professional life, at least, changed forever.
If you go back to that moment, you've decided, let me explore what franchising is. Now that you've been in it for quite some time, was it vastly different than what your expectations were?
Completely different. I had come from a world where in home services, you may not know this, but a lot of home service non-franchise business, a lot of independent home service businesses like moving services or cleaning services, a lot of those folks have this big X when it comes to the word franchising. And so I was in that world and sort of had a similar thought. And what's behind that thinking is basically the franchisor just collects this big fat royalty check and just sort of rakes it in while not really doing anything other than getting you open. That's a complete fallacy. I learned that, obviously through a lot of hard work over the last several decade plus, but that was what I was thinking. And so once I got in the industry and really started working directly with franchisees, I fell in love with it, not because of the growth. That was sort of a byproduct. What I love and still love about this industry is that you get to work with other people who are like-minded. They're not working for you, they're working with you. They're true, they're not legal business partners, but they're as close to it as it can be. And to me, that's wonderful because now I have people who we can talk the same language. We can discuss issues. We can dream together. We can do all the things that good entrepreneurs do together.
What's interesting about your answer, and it's very similar to anybody that I've talked with about franchising. Like no matter what, we have this perception. For me, all I knew about franchising was McDonald's, but I didn't even know what that meant. I could say the word McDonald's, but I didn't have any other concept of what franchising was. And now if I go all the way back to that moment, I'm like, it's much different than I understood. And so I say this because on the franchisee front, I haven't found a franchisor that says, well, wait a second, before we talk about this offering, we're going to educate you of what franchising is, which is probably partly the reason the franchise broker coaching consultancy side has grown, because you have franchisees that say, what's franchising? And they're willing to spend the time. They get giant commissions in exchange for it, but they're willing to spend the time educating the candidate. And I think through your answer, because you operated a business for a very long time thinking franchising was something other than it was, that I have a feeling that's what a lot of people think, and nobody's taken the time to educate them. Is that something that resonates with you?
Yeah, I still see it today. So I'm in two worlds. Like a good franchisor, we're now in the moving industry. So we're in kind of two worlds again. We're in the franchise space and we're in the moving space. And so we talk to two different types of people on both fronts. It's the same thing today. A lot of folks in the moving industry think franchising means, it's like a curse word, and so I am trying to be a little bit of a leader there to try to tell people how supportive a good franchisor can be. And how many great things come from a growing franchise network. Some of our best ideas back at Two Maids and a Mop didn't come from me. I take a lot of pride in being smart and creative, but most of our really good, strong ideas came from our franchisees across the network. And if we weren't a franchise brand, we wouldn't have been as strong. That's a fact, And so I'm seeing the same thing now with this new brand that I'm building. A lot of our great ideas, we're finding cheaper and better solutions to some things, not because of things that we come up with in a boardroom, but because of what our franchisees are telling us from the field.
Another thing that you just said that I want to call out is super valuable to specifically any franchisor that is watching this. You said now we're in the business of two things. We're in the business of franchising and we're in the business of moving. I think that's a very distinct statement because a lot of franchisors don't understand those are two different businesses. Like you are a multi-business operator the second you decide to go into franchising. And oftentimes, maybe more on the merging side, it gets blurred together that we're trying to operate two businesses the same way. But the journey of the customer is so different to that you're saying, hey, invest your life savings into a business, or hey, buy us or use us for this service. And what you said is so deeply important. I would imagine you learned that fairly early on with the previous business that you said, okay, we've operated this for so long. Oh, wait a second, franchising is a whole nother business model.
Oh my God. Yeah. So as we grew this brand and my original brand, the first brand, we basically converted 11 of our 12 corporate stores into franchises. And so those were kind of ATM machines, and we trained and we supported and we did all the things a franchisor does, but we didn't really have to be a great franchisor because the businesses were already so strong and mature. They were growing and profitable. So our very first early franchisees grew from ground up, no revenue, like a traditional startup franchise business. The training that we provided them early on was one, probably subpar, that improved over time. But more importantly, what we had to learn is that as that business grew, what they needed in their first year was completely different from what they needed in their fifth year. And we learned on the job, and we made some mistakes along the way. But at the same time, we became better at the support, because in our world today, there's a lot of dollies and trucks and, really moving heavy conversations for the brand new startup franchisee. But we know, even though our oldest franchisee is less than 2 years old right now, we know that in just a couple of years, those conversations are going to shift to profit margins and customer retention and higher level conversations.
If you're evaluating your entrepreneurial life and you have to rank these and best achievement to lowest, it's still a big achievement of building your first business, building your first franchise, selling your first franchise, or starting again. How would you rank those and things that you're most proud of?
That's a great question. So the original brand, Two Maids, I built that from the ground up. I had never cleaned a house before, really didn't clean a whole lot after we started the business, but I didn't know a whole lot about the industry, and everything was brand new to me. And we made so many mistakes. It took me 2 years to make a profit. It took me 3 years to earn a paycheck. And so building that into a profitable, scalable brand was really, to me, the most rewarding thing in my life. Now, what I'm doing today in building this new brand is probably equally exciting. So I hate to give you two answers, but you got to remember, I built Two Maids and a Mop over the course of basically 20 years. It was just over 19 years. And so over that 19-year journey, that's who I became. My identity was surrounded by all things pink, Two Maids and a Mop. And that's who I identified myself as. And so to sell that business was sort of like almost sending kids off to college, and then all of a sudden starting over with brand new kids who were going to grow up and again, at some point go off to college again. That's, for a parent, probably a hard transition to go through all of those 18 years and then all of a sudden start over. That's what I'm doing today. I'm very proud of what I'm going through right now, because when I first started Two Maids and a Mop, I was a much younger version of myself without as many responsibilities on top of that. And here, life is a lot more complicated for me with kids and just a growing network. And so to be able to get right back into the startup mode and put the same amount of energy and enthusiasm and passion towards this second brand, to me, that's probably, at least if it's not tied, it's at least a close second to, one of my best accomplishments in my professional career.
Do you feel that you perfected the process, that the widget didn't matter? I mean, obviously you picked moving and you picked it because you could see room in the marketplace for another competitor brand, but did the widget matter? Could you have done ice cream and it was that you figured out your process over doing it once before?
Yes and no. You give me a profitable, scalable home services business model, and absolutely, I'm confident, 100% confident that we could build that, grow a network, train, support, coach, consult, do all the things that a great franchisor does. I had been searching for that opportunity for years, even before I contemplated the idea of selling Two Maids and a Mop. I just couldn't find it. I didn't find that one unique industry that had yet to be disrupted, that had growth in front of it, that had big tickets. I wanted all sorts of small and big things to check off when I was going to search for that next opportunity. It actually happened sort of organically. My mother-in-law in our headquarters here in Birmingham, Alabama, hired a moving company. The experience was terrible. It was so bad that it made all of us in the family sort of try to help her out and assist her, because it was just horrible and way more expensive than she thought. And so my wife wanted to just write a negative review. I said, no, I'm an entrepreneur. Maybe we can do something bigger than that. And so we started searching across the country in different markets and trying to see what kind of reviews were, experiences customers were having. And a lot of the negative experiences matched what my mother-in-law experienced here in Birmingham. And that's what drew me to this industry. When I saw the industry, I saw big tickets. I saw growing demand, even in the face of, high interest rates, declining real estate, all of the growth is still there. And I saw a very fragmented marketplace. It matched what I saw and felt with the cleaning industry 20 plus years ago. And so that's sort of what got me here. But to give you a quick answer, long story short, yeah, if you give me a profitable, scalable home services business model, then I can probably turn it around and build a team to support that.
One thing that I think about when I think about the two businesses that you've been in, if I'm a franchise buyer, that isn't necessarily a hurdle I have to get over, but it's something that I would want to lean on you to gain the answer to, and that would be the labor pool. And I could say even labor, even more so today. Entitled is the wrong term, but when there's sports programs where everybody gets a trophy, the hardest worker doesn't always get celebrated like they used to. Is that something that when you're thinking about labor in both of the businesses that you've tried to think of, like, how can we stand out with people and make them feel really appreciated and part of culture? And that's part of the point of differentiation?
Yeah. So for years, I struggled with this on the cleaning side, and just turnover was through the roof. Morale was low. I mean, it was all things bad, right? It's the things you hear about when you think blue collar work. And I just couldn't figure out the solution. I tried so many different things. It finally hit me one day that people who worked in the blue collar world were no different than the folks who work in the white collar world. Everyone wants to have some type of purpose to what they do, to their vocation. And they want that to matter. They want what you do. Everyone wants what you do to matter to someone, at least. And so we in the white collar world, that's not hard to find. You're going to work for someone's going to review your work. Customers are going to review it, supervisors, whoever. At the end of a day or a week or whatever, you're going to have some type of tangible takeaway that says my work mattered. But in the blue collar world, that doesn't always feel like that's supposed to be present there. And so, we go do the work in the blue collar world, get our paycheck, and then we go home. And then we all in the blue collar world say, well, maybe there's something better down the road. The work is always an ends to a means to maybe a better version down the road. And so I sort of flipped that switch and said, why can't we make blue collar work just as impactful? Why can't we make our employees' lives better? And so both here and at Two Maids, we attempt to do that. We want our franchisees to not just hire people and say, go do the work. We want them to, one, build a story around what they're building so that people can feel like they belong to something. And then two, we want our franchise owners to get involved with our employees so that their lives can actually improve because of employment within one of our franchise locations. So at the end of the day, I think it's about purpose. If you create and deliver purpose for your employees, then their lives are gonna improve both personally and professionally, and morale is gonna go up, turnover is gonna go down, all the good things are gonna happen. None of that happens overnight. It's certainly a snowball type of investment, but if you believe you can do that with your business, then that's probably half the battle. At some point, you will do that, and purpose will be delivered.
I mean, that answer connects with me on so many different levels that I won't go into the complete infrastructure of it. But what franchising solves that I haven't figured out how to solve is during COVID, we go from 50-person office in Chicago to now we're going to be a remote culture. And so what we did is we stripped away all of the coffee talk or the beers after work or the kickball teams. And what we're left with is now just a job. And so it becomes harder and harder and harder to try to create value and impact on someone's life. And franchising, if you as a franchisor start with, hey, let's try to make sure we have good people coming in, that's who we're approving as a franchisee, then the hope is that they're going to watch how your microculture has been created, and they're going to carry that microculture into their own communities and be the champion of what you're trying to create. So that answer is awesome and totally connects with me, and probably helps position your why now when it relates to what you're selling to franchises. I would assume.
No doubt about it. Our world's a little bit easier here at Pink Zebra Moving than it was in my original brand. We thought we were really good. Again, profitable business model, growing, all the good things that come from that. We're trying to change everything about the local moving industry. We're trying to turn it upside down. We don't even want to disrupt this industry. I used that word earlier. That's the wrong word. We are actually trying to create a whole new category. We call ourselves the world's first happy moving company. We do all sorts of kind of crazy things, from free food the night before a move to surprise gifts left behind. We call those surprise boxes. We even dance. We do push-ups. We play music. And we got a crazy mascot that shows up. Trucks are loud and hard to miss. Guys who work for us, even girls, there are female movers, they all feel like they're a part of something bigger than just another moving company that's opening. And so we get to talk about that. We have a story. Every time we open a new location, we have a story that we can share that hopefully people want to be a part of. People like being a part of communities. And so we feel like by trying to disrupt and change this industry, then that organically brings people along with us.
Well, there's another element here that I think if we're calling it is what it is, you're a smart business person. The reason you invest into culture is because you know that it actually nets you a greater return as a business operator. And oftentimes we don't think of that, like the investment in humans and people and culture. It's not just like in business, it's not, yes, we want you to appreciate it more, but in exchange for that also makes the business more valuable.
No doubt about it. We've had situations where a mover comes to the owner and says, hey, one day I want to start a moving company. Well, most of those types of conversations are usually frowned upon in the blue collar world specifically. Who would want a new competitor? I try to, again, turn that upside down and instruct our franchisees and even their managers to think differently about that type of conversation. Not everyone's dream is to compete against you. Others want to go to college. Others want to be the first person to own a house in their family, or maybe it's simple. They just want to go vacation in Hawaii, or whatever it might be. But whatever their dream is, if you truly believe and care about what that is, it's going to produce positive results and dividends, not just with that employee-employer relationship, but it's going to spread across the entire office and business. And customers will feel that, coworkers will feel that. You won't have to force the happy hour bowling. People will want to do those things, because everyone feels like they're using this job for something bigger and better down the road.
As they should. Like at the end of the day, people should think about themselves and their families. And if a work environment can intersect with that in a positive way, then that seems to be a win-win on both sides.
I totally agree with you 100%. And we've seen that. We have so many stories. We have one, this is a small thing, but it's actually a pretty big thing in this employee's life. But one of our early movers. We're in the South, so the summers are hot and humid. His air conditioning had died the previous year. So, he didn't know how to deal with that because it was an expensive fix. He needed a whole new unit. And so he came to us and said, well, that's my dream. I don't want to go to Hawaii. I just want air conditioning this summer. So, the one thing we don't want to do is just stroke a check and say, here's charity. No one, that makes you feel good. And it's a great, noble thing, but it doesn't necessarily produce the kind of culture that I think is necessary. And so we said, let's figure out a way for you to save the money to pull that off. While he was doing that, we worked with a local HVAC company to set up some type of a different type of payment term. And we were able to pull that off before the summer hit. It took about 4 months, but before the summer hit, a new air conditioner was installed. He lived that was 2 or 3 summers ago, I guess now, but he lived that summer much more comfortably than he did the previous one. And he did it. It wasn't us. We started the conversation. We helped facilitate some of the solutions for him to make it happen, but he did it. He saved the money. He did all that. And so that when he gets to talk to his family about, why is our summer more comfortable? It's not because of us. It's because of him, which makes him feel even better.
I mean, I love that approach. And again, frankly, when you, sometimes by doing right, like every day he comes home after a hard day of work, and instead of going into a place where he's like, his body is physically feeling something that makes him say, okay, I feel good. And he's not disgruntled, and he knows who helped him get there. And that's pretty magical. And it's not a break the bank moment. And clearly you just said, we didn't just stroke him a check and say, here's an air conditioner. You created a process that probably creates appreciation and gratitude. And I think that's part of the magic. So where's the business today? How many franchisees do you have now?
So Pink Zebra Moving, we have 10 locations that are open and going. All of them are less than 1 year old. We have several more in pre-open. We'll be in around 16 markets by the early part of next year, sometime around February. It was the kind of the plan right now. We expect to open somewhere between 10 to 15 new locations per year. To me, that's the wheelhouse. That's sort of the wheelhouse I was in before at Two Maids and a Mop. And I know there's a lot of brands that go crazy and sell hundreds of territories a day, it feels like. But for us, this is the sort of runway and ramp that is both comfortable. It gives us the ability to train and support the way we want to do it. We're on site, not just for a few days prior to starting to grand opening, but we're there well into several weeks later. We're there a quarter later, 6 months later. We're there as much as we can be there, so that we can physically, be in front of a franchisee and or their management and engage with them, create the relationships that we think are important, and then most importantly, solve problems for them. This is all a new industry for every one of our franchisees. There's no such thing as an ex-mover who wants to start a moving franchise. Those folks, for the most part, start an independent moving company. So we're getting the white collar folks, the ex-salespeople, the ex-chemists, the ex medical device salespeople, and we even have some accountants and a medical doctor. And so those are the type of people who are owning this type of a business, one they probably never thought they'd own before. And so 10 to 15 a year is our wheelhouse. That's what we're comfortable with. And so far, so good. We'll be somewhere around 20 to 25 locations, hopefully by the time we talk again next year.
I love it. Ron, the only advice that I would give you is continue to lift up your story. I've seen you do it at points in your franchise history. But if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at what's the difference in the brand, yes, you've done the branding right, and yes, you've studied the business, but it's more so why you got into this and how you were able to do it is the fact that you studied business, you understood the mixture of operations and culture and branding and marketing and sales and process, and you're doing it again. Like just the fact that you're a second-time franchise entrepreneur would help make me feel confident in buying your business. And I want to see that story because I think that's who I ultimately buy from. Like moving for the people that you're targeting is the widget, but it's more so the purpose of why I'm buying this. And I'm following you. I believe that you know how to build good business. So I'm going to follow the leader.
Well, look, I appreciate you saying that. I'm still very active. I'm in the office every day. I travel, I visit with our franchisees. I talk to franchise candidates probably every single day. We turn some candidates down, because they don't necessarily represent what we're looking for and the type of franchisee we need right now. I love what I'm doing. I have purpose in what I do. And so it's hard, or it's easy, I should say, to want to show up and do the things that I do for my employees here in the home office and our franchisees across the network. So thank you for saying that. I hope our franchisees today and forever say the same thing.
Love it. Ron, thanks so much for sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it. This is another episode of Meet the Zor.